In the tunnel. In the tunnel. In the tunnel. You're listening to In the Tunnel.
Hello and welcome to In the Tunnel, episode number 68. Anything you want to start off this episode with?
How are you?
I don't know.
Anytime we go over a week without recording, I get a little thrown off now.
Yeah. All right.
And the fact that we're doing this at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night, maybe not my smartest move, but...
Yeah, so we're just gonna get right into it, right? So...
I mean, the next 2 weeks are going to be even worse with grad school, so...
Oh, fun. Okay. Yeah, anyway, we're starting off with the NFL. I guess the big thing around this time frame is the refs. Is it not?
Yeah, because refs are the people's people, I guess, in the sense that they all make mistakes that we are very critical of, but at the same time have other things to do with their lives.
Yeah, we crucify them for making mistakes.
So as it turns out, and much to the surprise of I'm sure a lot of people, refs are not all full-time refs.
No, not in the NFL. They're all contractors, right?
Correct, and a lot of them have other jobs.
Yep.
So, imagine what it's like to blow a game that you're officiating on Sunday and then have to be working somewhere else on Monday. But yeah, so because of that, and because of as the seasons will change and the worries that the COVID cases will pick back up when cooler weather starts to present itself again.
I mean, forget cooler weather. COVID cases are picking back up right now due to the protests in the U.S., but yeah.
I mean, that aside, refs don't really know how to approach the season because of potentially getting and spreading the COVID disease of whatever strain it is now among the various surroundings that they're in. So, and it's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is the refs probably are in a better position to social distance themselves than the players are.
I mean, the players are not social distancing, especially on the field.
Correct, but at this point in time, I think the season for the players is still far enough away where there's not really talk of, any players holding out or not playing because of that. I think the hopes are still high enough that things will diminish by then. So it's a little surprising because of the refs are not in the position to. They're not in the position to really. I don't know. It's hard to find a good way of saying this. They're not the riskiest party involved.
I mean, I can see that, but then again, I'm kind of surprised some players are not coming out and saying, hey, I don't know, with COVID, am I going to play this season, even with the N95 masks, right? I'm surprised that we're seeing ref news more or earlier than a lot of players, but at the same time, I'm not surprised by this.
So the thing is if you watch the Korean baseball that's going on ESPN early in the morning, you see that the umpires all wear masks. And if the mask is a big thing, like the referees and umpires for the NFL, it's not the most pleasurable thing to do, but you can wear masks, and for depending on if you're side judge, line judge, whatever it be, uh, I'd say probably half of the officiating crew per game is dealt a hand that's pretty tolerable in that you can wear a face mask, not sweat through it, anything like that. I wouldn't necessarily be too restricting, but then there's others where it could be. So I can see both of those scenarios as well.
I mean, yeah, you have like the main refs who are on the field that are getting in between the players in the middle of the downs to put the ball down, or walking back and forth between when the play's active, running and stuff like that. So I can see some. But you are correct in like there's the line judges and stuff like that where it's probably easier to social distance. But I mean, I don't think it's all like completely.
The back judge, the one that stands like in between the linebackers and the safeties.
Yeah,
like that's a pretty okay place to stand.
Yeah, until routes come, but
also in theory, the routes are built to not interfere with a referee.
Well, yes and no, because
not built to do so, but the throw shouldn't be coming, right smack at the referee.
Yeah.
So at the same time, it's kind of like everybody's running away or towards the referee, but never through the referee.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why like some might be like, hey, is that okay? And the answer could be no for some people. Especially because they all have other jobs, if they have those jobs at this point with the unemployment rate.
Correct.
All right. Anything else on the NFL you want to bring up?
Not right now.
All right, and on to our next topic, which is a brief touch at the NHL. So all that we know so far is that they're confirmed to come back, right?
Correct. We have no idea as to when.
We do know what, though, right?
We have an idea of what. We don't have an idea of when or where.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Because we know it's going to come back. We know it's going to be a 24-team playoff format.
Mm-hmm. The rumor is, from what I've heard through radio shows, stuff like that, is hub cities, and that the leaders right now are Edmonton and Vegas, maybe?
That's Vegas is a little weird. I would understand Edmonton because you can like do Edmonton and Calgary. They're pretty damn close. Like you probably have a lot of places to play around Edmonton even.
But the thing is, it's hard with hub cities to capture marketing the sport as best as you can outside of Canada and the American cities, while still doing it in a media market that allows hockey to be the top. But ratings wise,
the problem with Vegas as a hub city, in my opinion, is like, how many rinks do you have, right, in that area?
Right, but that's a question that is going to be there for a lot of places, right? Because let's say Vegas has a training facility, and the arena that they play in. I honestly don't know out here in Pittsburgh if things are any different. Well, because, I'm sure that there's smaller places.
Right, but they don't need the big places, right?
In theory, but, Vegas captures more of a crowd, especially on the West Coast, than, say, a Pittsburgh would out here, because Pittsburgh is not as big of a media market, so you don't capture the ratings.
Like, how much of it's going to be, like, there's literally going to be 0 people there, or very little people there, right?
So but this is about, saying that, hey, my city is one of the ones that brought sports back. But you also have to look at it as if the pandemic continues and cases spike among players, you need to have a healthcare system city that is prominent enough, which I think is why I think they're down to like 10 cities, and why Pittsburgh is, from what I've seen, still on the list, is because of our healthcare system.
Okay.
Because we've gotten nowhere near. At no point in the pandemic so far have gotten anywhere near the number of ventilators that we need.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I don't know.
Well, I just don't see why Vegas, with like the amount of practice facilities for teams and stuff like that. I get it from like a marketing, like we're coming back to Vegas, sure, but I think you need to take into account healthcare and like the abundance of the smaller arenas close by, so you don't have so many people traveling too far.
So the only thing other than that I can think of is Vegas is close to a lot of California cities that are, major cities that probably have a good healthcare system. So, like, if a player does get sick or something like that, they can be flown via helicopter or something like that to a California, San Francisco, Sacramento, any of those. In theory, if, say, Vegas gets filled up in their healthcare centers, there's a lot of bigger cities not far away, but that's in theory. That's not necessarily through fact.
All right. Yeah. So I can't wait. I hope the NHL does come back and it's all well. But yeah, on to the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So for this, we have. So the NBA is coming back with 22 teams. I found that number a little weird until I realized why.
Oh, it gets weirder. I mean, yeah, there's reasoning why, but it's really stupid.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. Go ahead.
It's basically every team that hasn't been eliminated from playoff contention,
uh-huh.
but at the same time, their time frame for actually competing and getting things done doesn't really enable them to have a lot of time before playoff contention.
Right, but yeah, and so it breaks down to 13 Western and 9 Eastern Conference teams,
mm-hmm.
And they all have to play 8 regular season games because it's who have not theoretically been eliminated. I guess they just can't skip straight to the playoffs with current seeding. I don't know why.
I think because the NBA, and this is how soft the NBA is it's like you played what?
They played
65,
65,
66, 67 games, depending on the team. You play that much of a schedule, and you still feel the need to give the teams who are outside looking in a chance at like proving themselves, as if 75% of the season being done already didn't give you the opportunity to like show what you were worth.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and
it's like very few times does the NBA champion, not have their shit together until the last 25% of the season.
Yeah, but the point is, like, we're in a pandemic, like, at least coming like this point of view, right? We're in a pandemic. Why bring those extra, was it 8 teams?
So normally it's 16, so yeah, 8 teams for 22.
Yeah, why, it's 6 teams. Why bring those extra 6 teams to to this site? And like you're just risking more people. You have to make more accommodations. Everything just has to grow, right? It's a lot safer to just go 16 because they're all the playoffs, and I get it. At least in my opinion. So I just don't like, as much as maybe having this 8 regular season thing for those bottom teams that are outside looking in very slightly will be fun to watch, but at the same time, like, maybe it would have just been better to do 16 teams start the playoffs, especially because you're now not ending the season till October the 12th, so your next season start is going to be delayed. I'm assuming.
Assuming, yeah. I mean, at this point, though, who really knows? Because other than a free agency period and I guess maybe a draft period at this point, you don't. I don't see the NBA draft happening in the winter. Other than a couple week period there, my thinking is, and I could very well be wrong on this, we've now looked at sports being gone for what, 2.5, 3 months?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically how long an off season is.
But the point is, right, with players getting drafted or re-signed, right, or even like free agent signings happening, you're still looking at that preseason time frame between the season to still happen to some degree.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that.
I'm not saying that like we'll get like a major delay, like, oh, let's not start the next season till January, but
I mean, and look, there will be major pushback from the players because they're going to say, well, how dare you have us go until October or September and October, and then turn around and start back up late November and December again. But, this is the thing is, because the NBA has become such a players' league, they didn't have a lot of leverage in this one. They have been paid most of their salaries already, so prorating it from here on out didn't really make any sense. And so they basically get to win, or the league itself basically got to make the decision on this one.
But the point is, right, like if you just go to playoffs, right, 16-team playoff, you probably take 2 or 3 weeks back, so you now end the season late September instead of middle of October, and then then coming back November is feasible.
The stupid thing is about all of this in sports is, I'm not saying that they need to get this, they don't need to get this right, because they do need to get it right. But they're spending so much time on the talking phase of it and the negotiation phase of it that they're basically putting themselves in traps later on.
Yeah.
Because in the NHL and the NBA, both seemingly has the smoothest transitions of the sports, the parties between the league and the players agreeing on something, and then it's just kind of like, okay, at what point is this going to happen? Because we are now a week into June, or not a week, but 7 days into June.
A week, dude.
And we still don't know when any of this is going to start. And these conversations of these leagues coming back have been going on for a month or a month and a half now.
Yeah.
So if conference calls or not, you've had plenty of time to interject plans, build plans, stuff like that. At any point, did anyone create a start date here?
No. Because
I'm glad to know that sports are coming back, but the fact of the matter is sports aren't coming back until there's a date for them to come back.
So according to this tweet, the NBA is July 31st.
Right, but is it though?
I mean, according to this tweet, 4 days ago, if it was ratified, then yes. But
so my thing is, good for them that they found a date then. And I understand I'm not going completely on a different angle here. Again, it's June 7th. Why do you need another month and a half to get this thing going?
I mean, I can see why you need a month, let's say, because
I'll give you 2 weeks or something like that. I'll give you 3 weeks, because say cases spike and you need that buffer time to just absolutely, we're dropping everything because a lot of states have gone to the green phase and stuff like that, and this just isn't worth it because cases are spiking again. And at that point, you just kind of terminate the seasons. But, and yeah, because you need the minimum 14 days of self-isolation. But at the same time, if things aren't substantially happening to deter from the plans, that's still 3-4 weeks of wiggle room.
I mean, I can see a month, but yeah, players need to self-isolate. Then everybody who's playing and officiating and like all the other staff, everybody needs to get there, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, sure, people are still squeamish about taking planes and all that. So you have to account more time for logistics of everybody getting there.
Look, man, John Madden was afraid of flying and was still a broadcaster who went from city to city every week for 20 plus years.
But you're not gonna, okay, that's different, right? You're not gonna force, like, people are afraid of the coronavirus, right? And,
they are, but they're also not.
But the point is that, like, I can see taking, like, a month, and I think a month and a half's pushing it, but, like, a month makes sense. Because you're giving everybody 2 weeks to isolate, then probably, like, a week to get there, and then everybody needs to have a week, like the teams need to have a week for their players to get together. It's not like you can just have everybody get there and then, the NBA season's back. You're going to watch the worst basketball you've ever seen.
I mean, look, I get it to some degree.
It's
and there's still
like,
practice facilities that are only letting like 6 players in at a time.
Right.
So I get that there's more to it. But at the same time, as things and as the public open up more and more, so kind of is the access and the acceptance for sports to open up more and more.
But I mean, also, we are seeing a spike in cases due to all the protesting now. So we don't know how this is going to affect anything.
Yeah, but let's be honest. And the protests, because of the demographics of sports, probably that needs a little bit of buffer time as well. Moving forward, more so with basketball and then hockey, you would assume, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, with that,
I mean, hockey is different.
Where protests are not going to be where the games are.
Yeah, but hockey is like Canada doesn't have these. Or at least I don't know if Canada.
But Canada has the border patrol, or not border patrol, but the border restrictions issue.
Yeah.
Where, and I don't know if it's changed anywhere. There wasn't allowed that crossover between American soil and Canada due to concerns of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. All right. Anyway, let's see the teams that are playing.
Yeah, and where it gets really stupid. Pointing out right at the number 9 seed in the East. So the East only gets 9 teams to do this, which is kind of weird, especially considering that they're going to be doing this in Florida. So they completely like screw over the one Florida team or one of the Florida teams in the Magic by putting the most remote chance team in the Washington Wizards in the 9th spot. And
don't they have to like win out? They have to win 7 of their 8 games, and Orlando has to lose out.
The Magic have to win like only 1 game, and the Wizards would have to win out. So I'd say you give like the Wizards just like a trial 2-game period, and if they lose one of them, just send them home. What's the point of them staying around?
I think
they're 24-40, and the next worst team has at least 30 wins.
Yeah.
And they're giving them 8 games.
Yeah. But they can take either the Nets or the Magic spot, right?
They could. They won't.
Yeah.
The Wizards are a train wreck, and John Wall has been out all season long.
Mm-hmm.
They have no bench.
Yeah,
So
and then but
it's
on the
not going
flip
to happen.
side, you have on the West, you have your team at 32 and 33, right? What? Like the Suns literally have to win every game, and like no team above them can win a game.
Right, but here's the thing: the Wizards are kind of like from a fall from grace period, where like in 2015, 2016, they were pretty damn good, and then they've kind of fallen this low. The Suns have been absolute trash. So for them to
Yes,
be invited is like the season highlight because it shows
they
that
should
they're
just
actually
turn
getting
down the
better.
invitation.
I mean,
I think the Wizards
the
and
Suns are
Suns.
like the youngest roster in the NBA, other than maybe the Bulls. So like for them to play, like they'll all be okay. They're young enough to be okay.
Yeah, but like
Um,
again, these guys have to win every single
don't
game.
get me wrong. As a partial Suns fan, don't get me wrong here. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
But at the same point in time, like, well, there's nothing better to do. Plus, the Suns arena is getting like renovations right now, so there's no basketball that's going to be going on in Arizona in that arena for a while.
Uh-huh.
Like, their arena gave up on there being a season continued there and just started demoing the whole fucking building. And they're like, this thing will be done. The renovations will be done completely like after the 2021 season. It's like, okay. So they're pretty certain that there's going to be some delays before the next game in the Phoenix area. So at this point, why not?
Yeah. But I mean, again, like, I just think, like, if you're that far gone, just don't come. Because even the Spurs,
It's hard to control the populace, too.
even the
Of who-
Spurs,
who
they have to
gets
win 6, and Memphis can't win.
Well,
It's just like
the Spurs don't have any good players anymore.
it's just like you really didn't need, like, I understand keeping some teams, like the Trailblazers actually have a shot, right? They're only 3 games back.
Trailblazers, Pelicans, and Kings are. I can make an argument there because
Yeah.
if you say Trailblazers, who are only 3 games back, you have to say Kings and Pelicans,
Yeah.
who are only 1 further game back.
Yeah, and
Um,
you have an 8-game season, right? The Spurs are 5 games back. So they have to win 6 games at a minimum if Memphis wins none. Right? And so when you're 3 or 4 games back, it's a little feasible because you can go 6-2, 2-6. That kind of makes sense. But you can't really expect a team to go like 0-8.
and this is one of the things I hate about the NBA is why can't you just have 2 conferences where all the teams are competent enough to make the playoffs? Why can't I mean like why is it that every time that the West is like 1 through 8 has at least 40 wins at this point in the year, the East is like well, you know, like every 6 through 8 is 25 wins with 15 games left. It's like, why can't they just do normal?
Yeah.
Why can't winning teams play basketball at times when winning teams should play basketball?
Yep.
I don't know.
All right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I just think you could easily shrink this list to like 20 by taking the Suns and Wizards out. Even like 19, just take the Spurs out while you're at it too.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is, and this really has no justifiable reasoning to it, is you need to have enough teams to make up an 8-game schedule where you know there isn't too much overlap and you're not playing a lot of the same teams. I don't know, but at the same time, I can see tiebreaker scenarios where it's like, you know, against certain Eastern teams, you know, the record being this, and whoever had like the tiebreaker would advance. But it would be really stupid to say like, oh, the Thunder and the Rockets, who have the same record, both played the Wizards, and only one of them beat the Wizards, so that team's higher up in the standings. Like, well, no, you don't punish one team for having lost to the worst team in the field.
Yeah.
But, you know, above all else, if you're going to do this, I really just want the teams to wear like the summer league jerseys,
The G
like
League?
those practice. No, the summer league jerseys, like the undrafted and rookie class jerseys that they play in the summer right after the draft period.
Ah, okay.
So you wouldn't see like anybody of veteran status in those games.
Hmm.
I really just want to see those jerseys instead of like the regular jerseys. Because if we're going to do this on a minimal and centralized scale, I say you really got to like drive it.
Okay.
So summer league feel is what I need.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about the NBA before we move on?
I'm just happy that one league apparently has a date.
All right.
Because I obviously care way more about hockey, and they're dragging their feet so fucking much.
Yeah. All right. On to the MLB.
Oh yeah, this dumpster fire.
Oh God. Okay. So let's.
Which, by the way, have nothing in the MLB has shown us that they understand how negotiations.
Okay, hold on. So the MLB, right? Let's give the backstory. They were like, all right, them and the owners were like, all right, 50-game season, guys, and give us a counteroffer. We'll negotiate. MLB PA. All right, MLB, we want a 114-game season. MLB's like, yeah, F that. We're just gonna leave.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, there's more back and forth earlier.
But I'm talking about actual proposals.
Right. Then there was more back and forth at first during like the higher risk parts of the pandemic. But at the same point in time, this is really just so stupid. Because how did you guys it seemed like off paper, off the books, they had a tentative deal in place for like 5 straight weeks of like, okay, we're gonna play like in 100 game season. We're gonna do it in Arizona or maybe Arizona and Florida. We're going to bring in like the playoffs and World Series. We're gonna be in home ballparks, but with no fans. But all we really need to do is figure out the pay, and that apparently, in all its wisdom, in all of its trouble, has been the make or break point that seemingly has changed every aspect that they were okay with.
The problem with the pay is that it's correlative to how long the season is.
Well, I understand why one thing kind of creates a domino effect for other things.
Right.
But it's creating domino effects for shit that doesn't even matter.
So, like, that's why the MLB wants a 114-game season, because it's like 70% of their pay or something.
The MLB wants
50%.
MLB is okay with prorating the salaries as long as it's on a smaller scale, so that they can say, "Oh, we're okay with giving you the money that you want at the ratio that you want, but we're going to do it in less of a sum." And the players want, we want more games because he told us there was going to be more games.
They want more of the money, right? Because a 50-game season would end up being like 30% of their overall salary, where a 114-game season would be a 70% margin for their overall salary. So that's where that one came from. But like, I'm just surprised. Like, can't you guys just do like an 82-game season, 50, and there you go, met in the middle.
Get it twisted, because the fact of the matter is that if there is no season, the owners obviously, because the owners are saying, well, we can't pay, 70% of a season. If there's no season, the owners are saying they're fine with swallowing the cost. Because they obviously are fine without any revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, if they want revenue, they would give more of a prorated sum.
But, I mean, I don't pretend to know how the money management in the MLB works, but
nobody does. Nobody knows.
Like, you gotta look at it, and I do think that 70% is probably a lot higher than the league could afford. I mean,
Yeah, it's not in like New York City, but
because if you look at it, right, you're not getting fan revenue. You're only going to get people to watch, right? And even then, like, how many people are tuning into these games, especially with how overlapping they can be? Like, there's so many baseball games going on at the same time that, like, the Yankees are playing. Maybe I'll watch a few innings, but, like, otherwise, like, what do you watch? So you don't know how your ratings are going to be.
well, I think that unfortunately for the MLB, and again, this comes back to timing because obviously earlier in this time without sports, they couldn't come back during that. But the MLB now, because of the NHL and the NBA, kind of missed their shot at dominating in a way where they would without not in a normal summer where
they don't have the
NBA
sports.
and NHL ends and you're stuck with baseball for a long time as the lone dominant sport.
Right.
But the MLB kind of missed their chance
They let it
of
squander.
getting any part of that done this season.
Yep.
Because now the NHL and the NBA are going to be there until if the MLB came back tomorrow, the MLB would have about a 3-week. Yeah, well, I'd say because the NBA and NHL going to mid-October, and if MLB went till November, it's like a 3-week period where the MLB will have their dominance, and it'll be really good because of the playoffs. But only 4 teams at that point in time will really have any advantage,
right,
in terms of ratings for that. They lost their opportunity, and it's because of some of the trivial stuff like this. Because there's more than enough ballparks in Arizona, Florida, places like that to have gotten this done.
Yeah, I don't think like it's not the like logistics for places to play that's a problem. I think it's like strictly how long the season will be and how much money everybody gets.
But look, if you look at in the graphic that we have here, that one of the key components that the MLB Players Association wanted was $100 million advance for next spring training and I guess the payrolls. That, I mean, for some teams that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket for the whole MLB Players Association having $100 million in advance. There's some players who are going to get $40 million next year. So $100 million is nothing. So, and they want an expanded postseason for 2 years. And this is where the trivial shit comes in. Is why are you trying to put expanded shit onto next year's playoffs when you haven't even established that there's going to be a this year?
I don't know.
And like I get for the MLB, they want like a 50-ish game season, but like that's never how baseball worked.
Yeah.
Baseball is about you play the game every single day. And I get that there's going to be restrictions and needing for distance because of the pandemic. But at the same time, what's your continuity and what's your approach when you say you normally play the same exact team 3-4 times in a row in a given week, and then say, well, you're going to play that team. Right. So in MLB, I don't think it can sustain itself like other sports where, you play like one game and then you don't play for 3-4 days.
Yep.
Because the MLB, you don't get as much of an action-packed, highlight reel kind of product unless you kind of consistently attack it and pursue the opportunities to have that. So if you diminish the opportunities, you diminish the marketing, you diminish the potential revenue and ability to gain new fans. So you kind of need a bigger sample size than 50 at the same time. But both sides, and we're now at the point that the Players Association has said that they're not they rejected the last offer and they're
No,
not
the
giving
MLB rejected the Players Associations.
right, and the MLB said, okay, and we're not
We're
coming
not
up with a
gonna
new
counter.
count. Okay. So what are we doing here? Are you just going to waste more time like twiddling your thumbs just waiting for somebody else to make a move?
I don't think baseball's happening.
No. At this point,
I mean,
I don't
I
think
hope it
either.
happens because of our next segment, but
I don't think it if it happens, it's going to be so much of a lost cause that it might as well you might as well not even crown a champion this year because the product is going to be so diminished and flawed that it's going to be a fluke.
Yep.
Unless it's probably going to be like the Dodgers winning the title because they won't have enough time to choke.
Yep. All right, so that brings us our next topic where if baseball continues and has a shortened season, who benefits and who doesn't?
We'll touch on other sports in a little bit, but this is a segment about fantasy implications.
For baseball, if we have a
right,
shortened season.
Because one of the ways that we, the fans, stay involved, especially, and will stay involved if baseball comes back until fantasy football season comes around, is to utilize fantasy baseball as a way of connecting into our limited amount of sports and fully embracing it in that extent.
Right. All right, so let's start with the first player, and you want to take this one?
Yeah, so Josh Bell was really good last, and let's provide a little bit of background of why this is a list of players who looked really good like before the All-Star break last year, but fell off in the second half last year after the break. This is a list of some of the older players in the MLB, ones that were kind of washed up last year, players who we thought and don't think will thrive given the scenario of a hypothetical comeback for baseball.
Great.
So our reasoning behind putting Josh Bell of the Pirates on the list was he had 100 RBIs, if not around that area last year, with 30-some home runs. He had a lot of that production in the first half of the season.
Right. So he had 84 in the first half of the season for RBIs and 27 out of his 34 in the first half of the season for home runs.
So, with that being said, we're under the assumption that if this player is a strong start of the season caliber player that normally kind of comes back down to earth in the second half, that say a 50-some game season or even an 80-some game season treats this player best, because we're not looking at all-star games or anything like that. It's just straight through.
Yep.
And if you can thrive for 82 games, that you'd be okay for in an essential season in this year's scenario.
And and to go along with that, like you also have player Eduardo Escobar. He had almost 70 RBIs pre the All-Star break, which was like 75 games or something, and post the All-Star break, he went down to 50 in 90 games.
Right. So, and this is a scenario, and again, this is assuming that consistently they start the season really good.
And moving on to like other.
So, just to clarify, we think that Bell and Escobar are players that do benefit.
Right.
So,
and
for some of these that we have graphics for, and for audio reasons, are not players that we think that thrive.
Right, but continuing on the players we think will thrive, we have a pitcher, Hyunjin Ryu, if I say that properly.
I'd never watched a game where he was pitching, so I couldn't
Right,
tell.
but before the All-Star break, he had a 1.73 ERA, and that spiked to about 3.2 after.
Yeah, 3.18 you said on our doc here.
Yep.
So yeah, and 3.18 is not bad. That a lot of pitchers would kill to have
Kill
an
it,
ERA of
but
3.18.
1.7 is amazing. And if he
But it's not sustainable.
right, but also if you look at his ending ERA was some like 2 point whatever, but he was really good for those 70 games. I think he had only like 15 starts or whatever it was.
Because in this hypothetical season, you're only getting that many starts.
Right, and also, like, your starts are going to be a little more, in the hypothetical season, your starts are going to be a little more spread out because you're probably not playing those games every day like a normal baseball season.
So you have more rehab time. I beg to say, not even in the sake of Hinju and Ryu, but in all pitchers, we're probably going to see less Tommy John surgery, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Because all the guys who are getting surgery right now and missing the season are going to be, they're setting themselves up for if things start like normal next year, which they won't, but if they do.
Right.
So.
Also, on the pitcher note, we have Luis Castillo, not the Mets player. He had a 2.3 ERA before the All-Star break and 4.8 almost after. So,
and he benefits more because the Reds are probably more a team that's up and coming.
Yeah.
Because they have Trevor Bauer, they have Puig now, I think. No, they don't.
No.
Traded him to the Indians, I think. But
yeah, they're up and coming, and they should be a better team in this.
They should be, yeah.
Around him, so
his supporting cast is pretty good, and because his supporting cast is good, he should excel at least for a good chunk of the season anyway.
Right. Next, we want to talk about Clayton Kershaw. Yeah, I actually think that even though the season is short, he would still kind of fail a little bit more.
You would do what?
He's declining, right?
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say. If you thought I was going the other way, so the Clayton Kershaw that we all know in the MLB markets is this dominant force, but he is already 32 years old, and while you can still have a long career ahead of you as a pitcher, he only gave up 17 home runs in 2018, and last year in 2019 when the Dodgers didn't go as far. Not doubled, but 28 home runs given up.
Yeah, so I mean, even
imagine he gives up the same number in a shortened season, or even 2/3 of 28 home runs in 80-game season. It's still not a great look.
Yeah, and even though the season's short, like he's getting older, so I mean, as much as that, like recovery time presumably would help him, I don't know if like. His arm would, he might start slowing down as the season goes, as far as like pitching speeds and stuff like that.
What we're kind of looking past here is the belief that a lot of these, say the MLB has the season out in Arizona, all 30 teams in Arizona. Mm-hmm. Not all those facilities are built for survival in the heat.
Right. Also, like, if the MLB does decide and say, hey, like, all right, half the teams are in Arizona, half the teams are in Florida, you might not get, like, those certain pitchers have just, like, phenomenal records against other teams. They might just not be able to play them. Right.
At the same time, you're not going to have a sample size against certain teams where you're able to dominate,
right?
Or batters are going to have good enough matchups to where you can necessarily plan things out ahead in advance.
Right.
You're using previous year's data where that still isn't sometimes sufficient because, as we saw, 17 home runs given up in 2018, 28 given up in 2019, things change.
Right.
And things can change drastically, especially when you're on the other side of 30.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have Edwin Encarnacion. So yeah,
Okay.
he started the season last year really well. 60 runs, 25 home runs. And then he only played 21 games after the All-Star break. He got injured, right? But in that
Mhm.
time, he was still run per game. So you're looking to see if he recovered well.
Mhm. And see, my thing with Edwin Encarnacion is since he left the Blue Jays in 2016, he's bounced around the league a lot. He
Yeah.
spent a couple of years with the Indians, but he got, dealt to the Mariners, then to the Yankees. Now he's with the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all in the past 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And he's 37 years old.
Yeah, he's
So as
getting
much as
older. So
what
yeah.
he brings to the table is okay, but it's now limited.
Yep.
And you know what you get with him, but he's now reaching towards the end of his career. So he'll maybe put up big numbers, but can you say for certain that he's going to?
No.
Or if the post All Star break numbers were a sign of things to come?
Yeah, because even then, in those 20 some games, he had like 9 home runs. Where in
Right.
the he was
And
almost
look,
on a like 1/3 pace previously.
and look, Barry Bonds, when he was old and even though he was juiced up, was always good for a couple of or for a handful of home runs. Uh, it's when he basically shouldn't have been in baseball, but was chasing a record.
Uh-huh.
David Ortiz, when at the end of his career, was always still good for hitting home
Yeah,
runs.
he
There's
wouldn't be
always
able to
still
hit
a
anything but.
there's always still a place for guys who can hit home runs, but there's not a lot of spaces in fantasy baseball for players who can't do anything but hit home runs.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it because of the inconsistency. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to put up Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa numbers
Mm-hmm.
to where your fantasy team really benefits. It's still a roll of the dice.
Mm-hmm. All right. On to Daniel Vogelbach. Yeah.
And this is a completely random name that I don't think either of us knew about. But this guy, he had 21 of 30 home runs before the All-Star break last year, and I think he's still relatively new into the league. I think last year might have been his first full season, so he's probably more on the up and up and benefiting
I still don't know
because
if you would pick him in your fantasy league per
not
se.
early in a draft,
Yeah.
but late round flyer. But 30 home runs is still not bad. And let's see here.
Right. Like, if you're going to put up 30 home runs, that's not bad, but you'd probably want some supporting stats with that.
Okay, actually, he's been with the Mariners since 2016, and his batting average is 205 through the 2019 season. So let's just say he's a flyer.
Yeah.
You risk it, but
All right. And the last player we want to talk about is Miguel Cabrera.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, my thinking is Miguel Cabrera probably benefits because we always knew he could hit, and he's been hitting for long since. I mean, past his prime for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing is a shortened season probably helps him see the ball better, unless he really starts on just an absolute struggle.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
see, the problem with the short season and like, I think in his case is like if he doesn't like get the ball rolling to where he's hitting well and he keeps at it
mhm.
with the games being so close together in a normal season, like he can have a few good hitting streaks and be able to see the ball well for a week or two, right? But when the games start getting spread out, I worry for his consistency because
See, but
he's
my
not
thing
seeing
is,
those faster pitches every day and stuff like that.
if he slumps, he now has a few days to step away from the game and reset the mind and
Hmm.
reset the focus. and slumps can potentially last a lot shorter of a time in terms of games. So
Right.
I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, those are a few players we wanted to bring up and their implications into what fantasy baseball might look like if it comes back with the season. Uh, Anything else you want to say?
Don't know that I have anything else baseball wise. Do you?
No. How about something to close us?
Uh, yeah, stay tuned because I guess what we'll do is we'll bring in more fantasy sports implications in the future.
Yeah,
I think with future episodes, especially as we wait for other sports to come back, that'll probably be an area of interest. Uh,
especially if we know like certain players aren't gonna play
right.
during this time, like who can be their replacement and stuff like
hmm
that.
Yeah, and I think at this point, you start to get a little interested in what fantasy football might look like without mini camps, training camps, stuff like that. So we'll see how those areas change as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks
But
for
for
tuning
now,
in, and catch you next time.
yep. Episode number 69 will probably happen earlier. Uh, um, Try to get it done this week before things start to hit a little bit more congested on scheduling.
All right. See you.
All right.